Good morning, everyone. This week, House Democrats will continue our effort to lower health care costs on behalf of the American people with a focus on driving down the high cost of life-saving prescription drugs. We continue to move forward with the effort around H.R. 3, which has been appropriately renamed in honor of Elijah Eugene Cummings. This was one of the issues that was of utmost importance to Chairman Cummings and the people that he was so privileged to represent and did in such a phenomenal way over 23 years here in the United States House of Representatives. And we will advance that bill at the appropriate time to drive down the high costs of life-saving prescription drugs. It's unacceptable. And everyday Americans understand this, that they are paying sometimes 5 or 6 times as much for the same drug manufactured in the same location as people in other developed nations like Canada, Great Britain, France, Germany, or Australia. Our legislation in honor of Elijah Cummings will drive down the high costs of medication by giving the federal government the power to negotiate lower drug prices on behalf of the American people by using its bulk price purchasing power. And we are as committed as ever to making sure we deal with that issue and protect people with pre-existing conditions, strengthen the Affordable Care Act, and lower the cost of premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. At the same time, we will continue our efforts to hold this president accountable for the conduct that has taken place in connection with the Trump-Ukraine scandal. We will follow the facts. We will apply the law. We will be guided by the United States Constitution. We will present the truth to the American people, operating under the principle that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States of America. With that, I yield to my distinguished co-chair, our distinguished co-chair, Vice Chair of the House Democratic Caucus, Katherine Clark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all of you. This week, the House will continue our work for the people. Today, we're going to vote to recognize the Armenian genocide. We are also going to vote on 3 bills to protect and conserve over 1.5 million acres of public lands, preserving cultural sites and protecting wildlife, wilderness, and waterways from oil and gas development. As the chairman said, we are going to be building on our commitment to lower prescription drug costs, and we will vote on legislation to increase transparency in negotiations between pharmacy benefit managers and drug manufacturers, health insurers, pharmacies, and consumers. Additionally, we will take steps to tackle the public health crisis facing many people, but especially young people in America, by passing legislation to require in-person age verification upon the delivery of online purchases of e-cigarette and vapor products. The changes that we are voting on this week will ultimately make healthcare costs more affordable for American families, and we are legislating as well as investigating. The question remains, as we move forward with the impeachment inquiry, who do our colleagues on the other side of the aisle work for? Donald Trump or the American people?
Thank you. Can you explain how this impeachment resolution vote on Thursday could be challenging to some members in your caucus who have swing districts or are skeptical of the impeachment inquiry? There were a couple I spoke with last night, Anthony from D.C., from your state, among others, and how that could be turned around against them, or how that's a challenging vote if they don't ultimately support that, or if they do.
Every member will have to make a decision based on their conscience and how they decide to most effectively represent the districts they are privileged to serve. the overwhelming majority of the House Democratic Caucus are publicly on record supporting the impeachment inquiry. The resolution that will be on the floor, which will be unveiled by Chairman McGovern and the Rules Committee, relates to the next phase of an ongoing impeachment inquiry that the overwhelming majority of the House Democratic Caucus already publicly support. That doesn't seem to me to be a challenge.
But that's not a problem for some of them, because impeachment might not be popular in some of those districts. I mean, Colin Peterson lost the district by 31, or President Trump carried his district by 31 points.
Well, that's a question that you're going to have to.
You don't worry that this puts some of those members at risk?
No.
Why?
This is about the United States Constitution. This is about the rule of law. This is about national security. This is about abuse of power. This is about the fact that the president betrayed his oath of office and the American people, and also undermined the integrity of our elections by soliciting foreign interference in the 2020 election. The evidence of wrongdoing is hiding in plain sight, but we will continue to proceed in a serious and solemn fashion. The timetable and the votes that we take will be dictated by the facts and the truth and nothing else.
Congressman, back here, please. Thank you. We're hearing from Republicans in reaction to Thursday's planned activity that it's already an illegitimate process and that Thursday's not going to fix things, so that they're just going to cross their arms and say, we're not going to play.
Yeah, my Republican colleagues continue to embarrass themselves because they cannot defend the indefensible as it relates to the president's abuse of power. A federal court has now said that the ongoing impeachment inquiry is legitimate and that the arguments that are being made by the administration have no weight. They are not credible. And my colleagues in the House Republican Cover-Up Caucus will ultimately have to decide, when will they put the Constitution ahead of corruption? That's not clear. And it's unfortunate that they continue to do the bidding of Donald Trump and behave like a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump administration, as opposed to a separate and co-equal branch of government. We'll see what happens on Thursday, but history will be watching to determine how we all are going to proceed, and will be the ultimate judge of our conduct.
Ms. Clark, do you think that they're moving the goalposts?
Let me just get the sort of second part
Hold
of
on.
that, which is a little bit about the goal.
Let me let Catherine Clark respond.
Yeah, the Republicans don't have any excuse for the conduct of this president. And from the letter that the president, from the transcript that the president released, his own summary shows those key words. Do us a favor, though. And that is what they cannot escape. And as we have more patriots coming forward, giving their testimony that corroborates, and today with Colonel Vidham, we have firsthand knowledge of this call and reaction. They are not only just focusing on process because they don't have any way to explain away this evidence and the abuses of power that we are witnessing, but they are also now turning to character assassination of these witnesses. They need to remember their oath. And they need to stand up for the Constitution. And it certainly shows, as the chairman mentioned, we have a federal judge ruling on Friday that this process is fine. And as we move into the second phase, the open hearing, the public hearings, to put these rules in place to make sure that we are transferring evidence from the Intelligence Committee to Judiciary to the open hearings in a methodical way that preserves the confidentiality of some of this testimony, that should be something the Republicans welcome. But you can see how specious their arguments have been by their reaction to this resolution.
I mean, it's not even clear what they're talking about as it relates to the process being tainted and the fruit of the poisonous tree, to the extent that you have a whistleblower complaint that has been repeatedly validated by Trump's own appointees. The Intelligence Community Inspector General said that the complaint filed by the whistleblower relates to a matter of urgent concern and is credible. He's a Trump appointee. The general counsel of the CIA was so troubled by the whistleblower complaint that she referred the complaint to the Department of Justice for possible criminal prosecution. She's a Trump appointee. The acting director of national intelligence testified in front of the American people that the whistleblower acted in good faith and followed the law. The acting director of national intelligence is a Trump appointee. What in the world are my Republican colleagues in the House talking about when they refer to the fruit of the poisonous tree?
The process. It would be the process.
The American people care about lowering health care costs, and that's what we're going to continue to work on. The American people care about fixing our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, airports, and mass transportation system. That's what we're going to continue to work on. The American people care about defending our democracy and upholding the rule of law. That's what this impeachment inquiry is all about. At the end of the day, they don't care about process, and everything about the process is transparent, is legitimate, and is constitutional.
Can you explain to me, though, the political wisdom of holding this vote on Thursday? As you guys both said, the judge unequivocally sided with Democrats on Friday, saying we did not need to hold a vote to formalize this inquiry. And my understanding, talking to Democrats, is that a lot of these procedural questions can be answered within the Intel Committee and voted on there. So why would you take this to the floor, put your moderates in a tough spot, and add fuel to these Republican talking points about process?
The overwhelming majority of the House Democratic Caucus are already publicly on record in support of the ongoing impeachment inquiry. As Catherine Clark eloquently outlined, we're in a phase right now where we're moving from information gathering primarily through depositions into the public presentation of facts and the truth to the American people. And consistent with that process moving forward, it's been determined that it's appropriate to outline how the transition will take place from the investigation that's ongoing now into the public presentation of witnesses, documents, information, and the truth to the American people.
And that needs to be a floor vote, not an Intel Committee vote. Has that been determined?
It seems to me that that makes sense in terms of having a floor vote because multiple committees are involved. Specifically as it relates to the resolution, which we haven't seen the text of yet because it hasn't been released by Chairman McGovern in the Rules Committee. But as I understand it, it will involve laying out the process for transferring information from the Intel Committee to the Judiciary Committee. And in that regard, seems to me that it makes sense that the entire House will weigh in on that question and that procedure.
We haven't seen the text yet, but you laid out some aspects of the resolution. Pelosi said there's going to be due process protections for the president. Does that mean they'll be able to call witnesses or subpoena witnesses? What are those due process protections for the president?
Well, that's a question that I think will have to be answered by Chairman McGovern, Chairman Schiff, and Chairman Nadler, who I know are working through that issue. But as Speaker Pelosi has indicated from the very beginning, we're going to proceed expeditiously, we're going to proceed fairly, and we're going to proceed comprehensively. We will continue to give President Trump every opportunity to present exculpatory evidence. Guess what? None has been forthcoming. At the end of the day, all we've seen is the effort by Donald Trump to stop fact witnesses from testifying and to hide documents and information from the American people. If the July 25th communication between Donald Trump and the president of Ukraine was a perfect phone call, why does the administration continue to hide facts, documents, and information from the American people? That's a question that the American people deserve an answer to, and we are going to work to provide it.
A number of Democrats have already announced that they plan to run for the vacant chairmanship of the Oversight Committee. How do you all feel about having a race potentially along gender and racial lines for this important chairmanship in the middle of this impeachment inquiry?
Yeah, I think I'm going to yield to Catherine Clark on that question. No, I'll simply say that.
I was ready.
And she's always ready, and I will yield to her. But I'll simply say that Catherine and I, as the chair and vice chair of the caucus, have to preside over the election. And so I'm going to reserve comment as it relates to the individual members who are well within their prerogative to decide to present themselves and their candidacies. The House caucus on the Democratic side will ultimately, resolve this question. The members will make their case. But we are in a difficult moment, not from the standpoint of our capacity to move forward thoughtfully and in a serious and solemn fashion as it relates to the impeachment inquiry. We have been doing that, and we will continue to do that. The difficult moment is that we've lost a legendary figure here in the Capitol, Chairman Elijah Cummings, who is irreplaceable.
I would just like to echo the comments of the chairman that we all feel the loss of Elijah Cummings' leadership, his personal friendship, very deeply. But House rules require that we fill this chairmanship within 30 days of vacancy. So the timing is set by the House rules, and we will take this up as soon as we return the second week in November to meet those requirements. And as to the diversity of candidates, that is part of the strength of this caucus, is that we look like Americans in our race, our religion, our ethnicity, and gender. And that makes for a stronger democracy and a stronger group of candidates going forward.
Until now, you had a lot of control over the narrative on impeachment because you have been having closed hearings. You'll have open ones now, and do you worry about, you're going to be offering also with those open hearings a platform, a public platform to the Republicans to make their arguments, and are you concerned about, the kind of spectacle that happened with, say, the Lewandowski hearing taking place now?
Well, Corey Lewandowski showed up on Capitol Hill and embarrassed himself because his only mission was to perform for his puppet master sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We are now in the middle of a serious and solemn impeachment inquiry that strikes at the heart of our democracy because of the abuse of power that Donald Trump has engaged in. And we will make sure that we keep the focus on the undermining of our national security, the integrity of our elections, and the betrayal that Donald Trump engaged in terms of the Constitution, his oath, and the American people. Let me be clear. The timeline of events speaks for itself. Congress, on a bipartisan basis, allocated $391 million in military and economic aid to Ukraine. Ukraine is a friend. Russia is a foe. Ukraine is a democracy. Russia is a dictatorship. The United States is the only thing standing, perhaps, between Vladimir Putin and Russia completely overrunning Ukraine as part of his fantasy to recreate the golden era in his view of the Soviet Union. That is the stakes. That's why Congress in a bipartisan way, allocated $391 million to Ukraine because it is in the national security interest of the United States of America. In February of this year, the administration wrote to Congress and said, the aid is on the way, but it never arrived. And then in May, the Department of Defense wrote to Congress again and said the aid is on the way and all necessary preconditions have been met by the new Ukrainian government, including the implementation of anti-corruption protocols. That was the conclusion of the Trump Department of Defense. Yet, the aid never arrived. Twice during the summer, Mitch McConnell called the administration and asked what happened to the $391 million allocated by Congress to Ukraine on a bipartisan basis. According to the information that's in the public domain, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell couldn't get a good answer from the administration as to what happened to the aid. Then, on July 25th, Donald Trump pressures the president of Ukraine to target Joe Biden, an American citizen, for political gain and thereby solicits foreign interference in the 2020 election. We have a rough transcript and a readout of the call and Donald Trump's own words. Do us a favor, though. 5 words that will live in infamy in the context of the constitutional crisis that we're dealing with right now. As a result of this pressure campaign, the president of Ukraine appears to relent, and then all of a sudden thereafter, the aid is finally released. That is what happened here. That is why we are investigating. And no matter what effort my Republican colleagues try to engage in to create a circus-like atmosphere, they will not succeed. Last question. Thank you, everyone.